All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the live stream. We got a lot to talk about today. I'm just going to go through a quick list and then we're going to get in detail. We're going to talk about silver. We're going to talk about gold. We're going to talk about fear and greed indexes that have hit all-time record numbers. We're going to talk about what the Fed did on Wednesday. We're going to talk about the fact that there's now a nomination for a new Fed chair. Consumer confidence came out this week. There were downgrades in the miners. Tesla had a big announcement today. We're going to talk AI, high-performance computing. We're going to talk about XRP and what's going on there. The Clarity Act is in the news. Coinbase and the big debate on yields on stable coins. So we have our plate full today, and today was not a great day in the market. George.
You didn't talk about if the government's going to close or not.
Well, yeah. And then, of course, the looming monster scenario of the government potentially closing tomorrow. So we are getting down to the wire here. We'll take a look at what the odds makers think is going to happen on that one. And what does it mean if it happens? Right, we just had the longest government shutdown in history a few months ago. And here we are. And it seemed to be pretty obvious at the time that all they did was kick this can forward just a little bit. We're right back in the same spot. And I'm not sure which way this is going to go. So let's start an early poll. That's a good question, George. Okay, so this is just a yes, no. What do you guys think? Is the U.S. government going to shut down tomorrow? Tomorrow's the day. So just a little background on this question. Unless they come to an agreement to extend either on a short term or pass a bill on a longer term, the government will shut down tomorrow. So are they going to pull something out of a hat here at the last second? Or are we looking at a second government shutdown in a very short window of time? And the last one that we just had was the longest one ever. And I will say, I feel like if we do move into a government shutdown, we stand a really good chance of breaking the record we just set. Now, maybe we can pull it out and avoid this here at the last second. That has happened many times. It just doesn't feel, from my perspective, that doesn't feel like what's about to happen. What about you, George?
I don't know. I heard Trump and Schumer came up with a deal.
Well,
that's what he was talking about.
Trump or Schumer?
Trump. He was talking about, it looks like they got a deal, but he goes, you just don't know until they vote, and you just don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You don't know. Somebody said I didn't put out. I'm gonna put out a post inviting people because I don't think. Seems like a lot of people did not get invitation. For the housekeeping. Okay. All right. So I just invited the world. We'll see who shows up. Don't know why the regular invitation didn't go out, but it is what it is. So, all right, we got our poll going. Is the government going to shut down tomorrow? Yes or no? Let's just first of all take a look at the big board, which is red. So we do have one outlier. Hive was green today, up 1.45%. But this was a week of just extreme days. We had several days this week that were extreme. Monday was a nightmare. Tuesday was a home run. Wednesday was so-so. Thursday was awful. And Friday is a half a train wreck here. So there wasn't a lot of time to be calm this week. Sour Melon Gaming saying they reached a deal yesterday already. No shutdown. Let's go to Polymarket and see what's going on there. Yeah, because I did not see a lot of buzz, but I did not see a single article on that. So is that, we're going to have to verify.
Verify. No, it's true. I mean,
you're on the verification committee, George. They have reached.
Yeah, no, I mean they supposedly reached a deal, but you know how that is. You know what I mean?
I know. I read 700 news articles today, and I did not see one of them say that. My apologies if I'm behind on this one, but let's see. That's old news.
You're giving me FUD, Tom.
Legislation to extend government funding that is expiring today and avert an extended shutdown. Well, I'm giving you FUD. You brought this up.
No, I know, but...
Will the government shut down? This came out this afternoon, 7 minutes ago. Trump and Senate Democrats reach a compromise to fund government, but it was unclear if it would pass Congress in time to avoid a shutdown.
Oh.
The bill has stalled in the Senate amid GOP infighting. So Trump and the Senate Democrats announced a compromise government spending bill on Thursday, January 29th, that reflects Democrats' concerns about immigration enforcement. The plan extends spending for the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees immigration and customs enforcement, blah, blah, blah. The Senate has yet to vote on the measure, though. After the Senate convened at 11 a.m., Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina took the floor and said he is holding up a vote on the government funding legislation until he gets a guarantee that the Senate will vote on legislation he supports, including targeting so-called sanctuary policies that limit local communities' cooperation with federal immigration authorities. So obviously, outside of our financial world news, the situation with immigration and ICE and the people versus the government, a lot of that has heated up. It's ultra uber complicated. It's not our wheelhouse, so we're not really going to dive into it. But tangentially, this does affect us because it seems like this is now a sticking point for a deal that's been agreed upon but not passed. So we don't know yet. Trump doesn't get to pass this. He's agreed to it, but he's not the one that has to agree to it. The Senate has to. So that sounds like there's hope.
There's definitely hope, Tom.
So you're saying there's a chance. Our poll is thinking 60% of the people are thinking it's going to shut down tomorrow. So if you haven't voted, there's a vote. Is the U.S. government going to shut down tomorrow? So the updated latest and greatest information as of 7 minutes ago is Trump and the Democrats reached a deal in principle. There's a bill that's waiting to be voted on, but there are Republicans, namely Lindsey Graham, who oppose that bill. And so he doesn't want it to even go to a vote. So we're going to have to stay tuned for the rest of the day. I will tell you, as it pertains to the government shutdown and cryptocurrency, we are waiting to get the Clarity Act passed. So I did read that the people that need to take the next step in that process, and there's multiple steps, it just passed a big hurdle, It's got another big hurdle before it can even go to the floor and get voted on. And those people said shutdown or no shutdown. We are going to continue discussions to try to get this thing done. So they are working to try to get this done, but there's some big stumbling blocks that we're going to go through. And it all has to do with stable coins, yield, and the banks and the central bank. So there's some big parties involved in here, and they all have very different agendas. And it's holding up this Clarity Act. Once passed, it feels like, you know, the pressure is mounting. The demand is being held at bay by this Clarity Act not being passed. We saw a big push in crypto when the Genius Act got passed, which ironically is a stablecoin act, yet the sticking point of the Clarity Act, which is a much broader act for cryptocurrency, the sticking point is about stablecoins. So we're going to get into that more later because that really is the whole argument there. And they gotta figure it out. And somebody says silver and gold are more volatile than Bitcoin. Who saw that coming? So, you know, let's talk about silver and gold for a few minutes, because this also, the silver and gold and Bitcoin have a relationship. Its relationship in the past has been a little more consistent than what's going on right now. So there's been a breakdown. Bitcoin is dramatically underpriced versus the historic relationship between Bitcoin and gold. And then, of course, silver went bananas. But, of course, today it got destroyed. So we're going to go through what happened with those. Why did those get destroyed? And just how historic it was. If you look, so gold had a bad day, right? You can see, like, this is the daily chart. So there's a lot of candles on here. None of them are anywhere near as big as this candle. This is the small move. I mean, it was rough, but from the high of yesterday, I'll go until the low of today. This was a 16% move from the high of yesterday to the low of today. But from open to close today, this was just about a 10% move down, it looks like. So, and the day's not over. Silver, which has been going insane. So we talked a lot about silver and gold on the members only live stream. This got up to, so yesterday, this got up to $121. So silver over $120. This crashed today. So gold had a bad day. Silver from the peak yesterday until the bottom today was down 38.5%, nearly 40% drop from the top to the bottom. And then, you know, on the day, we're talking about 28% down. And let me go to an article real quick here. Oh. Silver plunges 30% in the worst day since 1980. We should do a survey. How many of you were alive the last time silver had a day this bad? Right? That's 45 years. It hasn't had a day this bad. Silver futures plummeted 31.4%. Making it the worst day since March of 1980. So let's just say I was still a kid at that time, and I do not remember that. I wasn't paying attention. So, I mean, this is brutal. If you hold silver, and here's the problem, and this is what we talked about, and what I said was, listen, I'm not chasing at this point. We talked about silver at $25. Really, George started talking at it around $21. We've been talking about it ever since. I did not get into this trade. Yes, I kick myself because, even had I jumped in at 25 after we'd been talking about it for a while, it got up to $120. But, I mean,
you gotta sell then too, Tom.
Right. This is about understanding where you're at in the cycle, what's going on with the fundamentals, the technicals, what's going on geopolitically, because a geopolitical event that kind of took me by surprise was the reason for this ultra sudden whammy, or one of the reasons. But it was pretty clear, like, this was not time to chase silver. You're buying silver at 120, was not. It doesn't take hindsight to figure out that was not a great entry point. Now, maybe today is a good entry point. I don't know that the silver thing is done. I think that this probably is an overreaction, but it could keep pulling back a little bit. I mean, do you think the narrative has changed overall on silver and gold, George? Or is this just
I think people are going to wake up and realize, maybe people woke up and realize if they're not holding actual silver, they hold nothing.
Yeah, all this silver and gold everybody owns, they don't necessarily, they physically, almost nobody physically owns the silver or the gold.
They hold both.
Old Jock is saying something similar. The only gold and silver prices that really matter now are the physical market in Shanghai. The rest are irrelevant. Well, as long as you're not invested in them, they're irrelevant. But if you were putting money in this, you got killed today. Now, if you were putting money in this and dollar cost averaging in from all the way from $25 up to $120, then, today's a bad day, but you're probably still way up. So it depends when you got in on this. We just crossed today. More than 50% of the people that hold Bitcoin are in at a loss right now, because a lot of the Bitcoin changes hands on a regular basis. So we're at, we bottomed. Well, we hope we bottomed out today. We had kind of a double bottom today, which we'll look at later. And that put a lot of people into the red today. So half the people that own Bitcoin are in the red overall. Now, obviously, there's still some people that have wallets from, 15 years ago that are infinitely, well, not infinitely, but monstrously up. So, the other half of the people have made various sums of money, and, everybody in between. So it depends when you got in, how you got in, when you started dollar cost averaging.
Remember, Tom, we've been talking about this. This is going to be 2 different years, the first 6 months and the second 6 months. It's going to be doom and gloom all the way up until May 15th, pretty much.
Yeah, so we've been talking about a bumpy road the first half of the year, and then a little bit of blue skies the second half of the year. Now, something today happened that a lot of people are going to argue may change that, and that was the president made a nomination to replace Jerome Powell as the Fed chairperson, and it really was not. I'm going to show you guys. This was not who people thought he was going to pick. Now, it wasn't out of left field. He was one of the top 4 candidates, but this was changing on a daily basis. And so let's go to that, and then we'll get into exactly what all of this means. So first we'll go. So let's talk about this, because this is going to massively impact what goes on with Bitcoin, cryptocurrency beyond belief. But every part of the market is going to depend on just exactly who is this person, assuming he gets through the nomination process, which seems highly likely to me, since of the 4 people they were talking about, he is by far the most center. So I would think he has by far the best chance of getting through that process quickly. There's a spot opening up on the Federal Reserve shortly. He's probably just going to take that spot. But let's talk about it. And then I want to show you what happened, because this situation changed and then it changed again. So Trump nominates Kevin Warsh for Federal Reserve Chair to succeed Jerome Powell. So for those of you who don't know, and I think most of us know, Jerome Powell's last day is May 15th. So we are getting very close to that day. Jerome Powell does not want to lower interest rates. It's not a gray area. He's been pretty open about that. So versus the executive branch of the government, which is not in control of interest rates, but obviously, is potentially influential, being that they're naming the next chairman of the Fed. The president has said interest rates should be at 1% or less. So to get there, you would need 2.5% or 250 basis point worth of rate cuts. Now, I don't think anybody expects them to get there, specifically not right away. And for those of you paying attention, typically whatever Donald Trump is asking for isn't really what he wants or expects. He overasks. It's usually some level of hyperbole in hopes to find some middle ground, which is where he wants to land. But of all of the candidates, this candidate is the least likely to be dovish. This was the most hawkish candidate of all the candidates that he was picking from. And he was never really the leader at any point until such time as he got nominated. So the leader did switch. So President Trump on Friday named Kevin Warsh to succeed Jerome Powell as Federal Reserve Chair, ending a prolonged odyssey that has seen unprecedented turmoil around the central bank. This is a quote from Trump. "I have known Kevin for a long period of time and have no doubt that he will go down as one of the great Fed chairmen, maybe the best." This was Trump on Truth Social.
So he did pick a Kevin.
He is nominating Kevin Warsh to be the new chairman of the Federal Reserve. Now, he's got to go through the appointment process and get approved, but I think that's perfunctory. I would assume that's going to happen.
What? Nothing.
Well, yeah, assume nothing
anymore. Yeah.
True. President.
I just realized something though. 1980 is 46. If we were born in 1980, that's 40. I can't even comprehend that.
Let's put it this way. That bad day that Silver had, Jimmy Carter was the president of the United States on that day. That's how long ago that was. The decision culminates a process that officially began this summer and started much earlier than that. The Trump launching a fuselage of criticism against the Powell-led Fed almost since Powell took the job in 2018. Now, remember, Trump's the one who nominated Jerome Powell and put him in this position. And I don't think he was so angry at him in 2018, but I do think a lot of people, myself included, did start to lose patience about 6 months into hyperinflation, listening to the Fed say we do not need to raise rates. Right, rates were at near zero. We don't need to raise rates. Inflation is transitory. I'm sure everybody remembers the word transitory. We heard that for 12 to 15 months until the wheels had come off and inflation had skyrocketed. And here's the thing, you don't get to get that back. Like that's now your baseline, right? So all that inflation that we went up to, that is now the baseline by which future inflation numbers get judged on. So unless you go into a severe deflationary period, your trip to the grocery store isn't getting any better. The most you can hope is that the increase slows down dramatically. Now, there's a few items that spiraled out of control that, eggs for a while were, for some more specific reasons, were up 400%, and that has dialed back. Meat is still very high, and that could dial back. But in general, across the board, when inflation happens, the concept that it was transitory, that would be the first time in the history of anything that I'm aware of where inflation would be transitory, in that it would reverse itself, especially when you're at over 9% inflation. The Fed's target rate is 2%. They waited until it got to over 9% before they started raising rates. So from that time forward, I think this administration's been frustrated. I've been, for those of you who've been watching this channel for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm not saying frustrated, baffled. It's baffling to me. So now that's all coming to an end, and we're getting somebody new. Of the people we thought we were going to get, the market was a little shocked today. And this was one of the primary reasons that silver and gold slammed on the brakes and basically tanked today, because people have been afraid that the person that got appointed the chairman of the Fed was going to be a puppet, if you will, of the executive branch, and was just going to do the president's bidding and lower rates dramatically and massive quantitative easing, all of which was going to hurt the dollar, all of which is a reason for flight to safety to silver and gold. Silver has its own narrative on top of that because its use case is massive in the new economy. But that's why, gold went from $1,800 to $5,500 in a couple of years. And silver went from $25 to $120 in a couple of years. So these things have been off the hook. A lot of this, particularly with silver, if we go back to this chart, you'll see this is a very recent surge. Silver was at $50, 2 months ago. So it pulled a 50 to 120 in 2 months. That's crazy. After it had already had a giant run up. It was at $28 10 months ago. So it went from 28 to 121 in 10 months. Right, this line here at 49 is back from April 2011. That's the highest silver's ever been in the history of silver. And we just put that in the rearview mirror. I mean, we spiked straight up to more than double the previous all-time high in a super short period of time. So this was really, if you look at, let me just go to this one. This is the daily RSI. I mean, you can see this green shading. 70 is considered overbought, which means you're starting to get into a territory where you're risking a pullback. 30 in general, which is this line here, is considered oversold, and generally you're nearing a bottom. That doesn't mean everything's going to turn around on those days. This can take funny paths. For instance, this was green back here in October. And from this giant part where we were up to 84, even with these resets, we got from $50 to $120 in this short period of time. But every time you get super green like this, you run the risk of, look, at the end of this was off a cliff. At the end of this doesn't even show what really the full extent of what really happened today. But we went from 84 to 48 in one day on the daily RSI. That's a train wreck. And again, it was the worst day in 45 years for silver. And that's got to be as a percent, because as a dollar amount, there's no way it's ever gone down this much in one day, because for 99+ percent of the time, silver wasn't even worth as much as it went down just today. So
do you think it's a good time to get into silver?
I feel 1,000 times better about it. But if I did, and I have not yet, I would dollar. So again, not financial advice. I got to, you guys got to figure out what works for you. Everybody's on different time frames. Everybody has different risk tolerances. And if you want to know how risky silver is, it went up like 300 or 400% in a few months, and it crashed 30% in one day. Somebody said earlier, this stuff's getting more volatile than Bitcoin. So these have turned into highly volatile things. My position would be, this would be a good time to start dollar cost averaging into silver. This could potentially be a good time to start dollar cost. I would not go all in. Like if I wanted just to use random numbers, let's say I wanted to build a $10,000 position in silver over time, I would, buy 10% of that right now and start dollar cost averaging in and see where silver goes from here. If you buy everything on one day, you better be at, you
once in a lifetime number, yeah.
Well, you certainly better not be monumentally overbought on the daily RSI. I mean, everything was pointing to this is a bad time to buy. So if you went all in at $120, I mean, the market was screaming, don't do this. Now you're in a position where maybe you start dollar cost averaging in, and maybe this pulls back. This could easily retest. You could see, like, there was an area here. Again, this previous all-time high was 15 years ago. So that was at just about $50. So could we go bounce off of 50? Yeah. So maybe, you're buying in all the way down as we bounce off of 50. Maybe it never does this. Maybe you're buying in as it recovers. But, you're mitigating your risk either way. I don't like to buy. I made one trade last year where I did buy my entire position in one day, and it was, the stock was wildly oversold. It was down, 60 or 70%, and I switched out of something into something else. But I typically, that is not how every other position I have, I've dollar cost averaged into over long periods of time. And I know that's not for everybody, right? There's a lot of different ways to go about this and win. But unfortunately, there's a lot of different ways to lose. And retail investors tend to be on that side of the ledger more often than not, unfortunately. So let's just look. Silver plunges 30% in worst day since 1980. Gold tumbles as Warshpik erases Fed independence fear. So this is what I was talking about. Everybody's been fleeing to this, thinking one of these couple of other people that have been in the lead were going to get the nomination. They were going to be yes men, if you will, for the president. And all of a sudden, our monetary policy was going to be, the separation that the Fed is supposed to have. Maybe everybody was afraid was going to disappear, at least for the next 3 years. And there was fear. I mean, when you get these kind of run-ups, especially gold is the ultimate flight to safety. It's not supposed to double in a year. That's right. That's extreme fear. So, however, I want to find this article because it's important. So here's another thing, a great indicator. Gold in extreme greed sentiment. This was yesterday. So when this was written, they did not know what was coming today. Bitcoin bullion ripped past $5,500 and sentiment gauges hit extreme greed, while Bitcoin stayed pinned below 90,000. And we know it went down from there. A split that's getting harder to ignore. So this article was going to go into, there's been a divergence from gold and Bitcoin. Bitcoin's at, a multi-year low versus gold. Having said that, if you went on and read this article yesterday, you would have seen this. The fear and greed index for gold. 99. Extreme greed. That's on a scale from 0 to 100. So that's the all-time record. The greed on gold was at an all-time record. It was overbought on the daily RSI. It had just been spiking day after day after day. So it's not like somehow we wake up today and it's down 8 or 10% and it's some kind of shocking mystery. Like they were banging us over the head with this. 99, I'll just tell you this. I've never held on to an asset when the fear and greed hit 99. Right, you got to start worrying depending on the assets, these things get to different levels. And the same thing is true. I'm going to go back to this chart. For silver, for more volatile things, and this has turned into volatility, this 70 really is not oversold. It starts to become 75 or 80 is what you want to look at. But when it gets over 80 on the daily RSI, and on the flip side, instead of being oversold at 30, it can get a little lower than that when things are going bad. But, by 25, and certainly by 20, it's drastically oversold. So, there's a little flexibility at the edges here, but you can see what happened. I mean, this just fell off a cliff. So it wasn't hard to figure out that. Now, I'm not saying anybody said, hey, tomorrow's silver's dropping 30%. That would have been a heck of a take. But the fact that it's pulling back and that I think it could be not done pulling back, this could easily reset. And there's a really, really good testing point here to see if it can hold as support. Now, you could possibly argue that right here is maybe a good testing point as well and see if that can hold, which we practically retested. But we're going to find out. I don't know. But obviously, this sent shockwaves through the market today. The market did not do well today. Bitcoin did not do well this week. It wasn't so much today, although the Bitcoin miners got beat up today. So we're going to look at what the Bitcoin miners did versus Bitcoin this week. Also, this was the last trading day for equities in the month of January. So we now have 1 month in the books for 2026. And even with this beatdown today, most of the Bitcoin miners, and we're now calling them the Bitcoin miner high performance computing data center plays, most of them had anywhere from a good to a great month of January. So even despite the fact that today, IREN was down 10% today. That's a bad day. Riot was down 8.8% today. Wolf was down 8%. HUT was down 9%. You can see these are the AI, the ones that are leaning more heavily into AI. CIFR down 9.8%. But even the Bitcoin miners that are not as much leaning into AI yet, Marathon was down 3.5%. You've got CleanSpark down 6%. CleanSpark has made a major shift recently. BitDR down 1.6%, so that's not that bad. Bitfarms down 4.5%. Hive green for some mystery reason. So Hive was up. And you'll see how it fared on the week when we take a look at that. And Gambit Beer saying, don't think I've ever seen the Bitcoin at Fear and Greed Index at 99. And you are right, Gambit Beer, it's never been there. It's been to 90, and that to me is just wildly extreme greed. 99, I mean, guess what? There's nowhere else to go but down. Beer, thanks for being a member. Also said those metalheads are crazy. Well, and they've been wrong. the gold bugs have been wrong for a long time, and now they have been unbelievably right for a couple of years. So I'm sure that's got to feel good for them. But you're going to get, when you get these kind of vicious run-ups, I mean, this run-up in silver is ridiculous. You're bound to have, and you know, not necessarily in one day, but even just going, this is just 10 months ago, right? I mean, in 10 months, silver. So this is silver, right? Which is traded in a range for 40 or 50 years. All of a sudden was up 300% in 10 months. I mean, that's not really how that works. So we got a correction. There could be more to come. And again, a lot of this has to do with, I'm going to get back to follow through on potentially our new Fed chairman, Kevin Warsh. So I'm going to go to Polymarket because this has been very telling. So you can see now he's at a 99% chance. He's been nominated. So why is he not at 100%? He hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think that's apparently the market thinks that's a 99% probability. But if you look at this, this was his, so look at his line that went up here. And I don't know why there's two different blue lines, but forget the one that's a flat line at the bottom. You can see he was down as low. Well, actually, I thought I had this already open this way. This has been his chart since August of 2025. So he was at like 17%. He was one of the Kevins, right? He got as high as 47% in December, went back down to 18%, spiked up again to 62%. But then in the last couple of weeks, he's been in third place at 27%. If you look at Kevin Hassett, right, he was the clear favorite, 84% in December. And even though that pulled down, he was still pretty clear favorite, you know, at 62% in late December. And then all of a sudden it became clear, no, it's not going to be him, but it didn't switch from one Kevin to the other. In the middle, and this was this week, look at this chart. This individual, Rick Ryder, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. All of a sudden, you know, he was down all the way down to 1% in December. He went from 1% to almost 53%. And he was at 50% within the last few days. But he didn't get it out of left field. Trump went a different way to the person that, you know, you can see he was down at 25%. So at that point, he was at 25%. Kevin number 2 had dropped off the face of the map. Right? He was out. This person was, I think, considered just too dovish, too close to Trump, too high risk for the market's tolerance. So they moved away. This gentleman was a former Goldman Sachs. Where did he go? Well, anyway, he didn't get it. This is the person who got it. Kevin Warsh. So
was he the Coinbase guy or no? He was not the Coinbase guy.
No, he was not the Coinbase guy. He was not the BlackRock guy. He might have been a Goldman Sachs guy. Let's take a look. Okay, so here's just a couple quick articles. This article I'm not going to spend too much time on because it's an interview. So Bitcoin, this guy used to be on the Federal Reserve. He was not the chairman, but he was a chairman. The former Federal Reserve governor has invested in crypto firms, criticized Bitcoin's role as money, and argued for U.S. digital dollar. So that's a little misleading. If you dig a little deeper, the first thing is, So he's a former U.S. Federal Reserve governor who served from 2006 to 2011. So there was no such thing as Bitcoin when he was on the Federal Reserve last. His big interview that they talk about, I'm not finding it here right away. Here. In public commentary in 2015. That's now 11 years ago. Bitcoin, whatever Bitcoin was in 2015, has nothing to do with what it is today. And whatever somebody's opinion was on it 11 years ago, most likely most of us that have come to know what Bitcoin is and seen the journey, right, have a little bit of a different opinion today. But back in 2015, he had a video conversation with Stanley Druckenmiller, and he said the underlying technology is that white paper. It's just software. Warsh said during a video conversation with Stanley Druckenmiller, it's just the newest, coolest software that will provide us the opportunity to do things we could never have done before. Now, again, this is 11 years ago. I'm not really basing what his thoughts are on cryptocurrency from a conversation he had 11 years ago. There's more up-to-date information. Let me see if I've got, go to this article. Here's what the appointment of Warsh to the Fed could mean for interest rates this year. After President Trump on Friday nominated former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh to lead the central bank, market participants quickly began speculating what his chairmanship would mean for the path of interest rates this year. If confirmed by the Senate, Warsh will face a deeply divided Fed at a time when the 19-member committee has set up the potential for a long pause in cutting rates, right? That's what they're in the middle of. A pause of cutting rates. They didn't cut at this week's meeting. They're not going to cut at the next month's meeting. We'll look at that. But I do think you're going to get cuts. And I still think it's going to be more than people think. Many members feel the central bank has done enough to shore up concerns about softening job growth with 3 rate cuts last fall. So if you remember, we were going to get those 3 rate cuts at the beginning of the year in 2024. We got them at the end of the year in 2024 instead. So they waited almost a year for that. And then they went back to higher for longer. And I think we got what? A rate cut? 1 rate cut?
We did get a rate cut.
So this talks about, and I kind of disagree with this, but the committee members are always open to better arguments. Special deference to the chair only goes so far. So it may appear that the committee always goes along with the chair, but we believe that's largely a function of past chairs positioning themselves closer to the center of the committee. So I would disagree with that a little bit. And this is from JP Morgan chief economist Michael Feroli. So that's what he's saying. What I'm saying is I never saw the Fed chair's vote has never been a dissenting vote. In other words, whatever the Fed chair votes is what happens every single time that this has ever happened. So I'm not calling that a coincidence. There are sometimes dissenting votes. The last couple of times in a row, this time there were 2 dissenting votes. 2 chair members, 2 of the members of the Fed wanted to lower interest rates this time. But the majority wanted to keep it where it is, which was we knew was Jerome Powell's position. The market had priced in a 97% chance that it was going to stay where it was. 97 equals 100. They're not going to rug pull with that massive of a flip. Warsh will have to convince his colleagues the rate cuts are appropriate this year, an argument that is unlikely to win unless the labor market shows renewed signs of weakening or inflationary pressures ease materially later this year. So, again, I disagree with this guy. This is Matt Lazzetti, chief U.S. economist for Deutsche Bank. I got to disagree. Underscoring Walsh's challenge, St. Louis Fed said he thinks the current level of 3.5 to 3.75 is at neutral, a level designed to neither boost nor slow economic growth, with inflation still above the Fed's 2% goal. Also misleading. At the same time, Fed Governor Chris Waller said Friday he dissented at this week's meeting, preferring to cut rates by a quarter point because he says the job market remains weak. And to me, this is a much more realistic take. This is going to be the sales pitch, and I will be very surprised if it doesn't happen. He said, let this sink in for a moment. Zero job growth versus an average of almost 2 million for the 10 years prior to 2025. So we've been adding 2 million jobs a year to the economy for the last 10 years. Last year, zero. By the way, they haven't done their markdown yet. We will have, once they finish this, there's a super high likelihood that we lost 500,000 or 1 million jobs last year. So it only ever gets worse as they continue to revise and make a final number. In a hurdle with reporters Friday, Trump was asked whether Warsh would commit to him that he would push to cut interest rates. No, but we talked about it, and I've been following him, and I don't want to ask him that question. I think it's inappropriate, probably would be allowed, but I want to keep it nice and pure, Trump said. But he certainly wants to cut rates. I've been watching him for a long time. When asked whether he has concerns about Warsh's hawkish leanings historically, Trump said, I've had times when I think you've had to hike rates. So sometimes rate hikes are appropriate. Warsh has been somebody who everybody says he's hawkish, but I think his record will show he's fairly centrist. And I think he's on record saying, we need rate cuts right now. Don't know what we're going to need a year from now or 2 years from now, but he's saying, like, the job market, inflation's been under control for years, and we just had the worst job market in a decade last year. And this year, we're only 1 month in, but it's likely not getting any better at this point. So what does all this mean? Here's how the market digested this. I feel like the market doesn't know what to do with this because if you look, this is for the next meeting, the March meeting. A week ago, this was at 14.9% chance of a rate cut. Now it's at 15.3% chance. Within the margin of error, this is unchanged. So I think they view this person as not really moving the needle in either direction. If you go all the way to December, you'll see the more likely scenarios are this is 1 rate cut, 2 rate cuts, 3 rate cuts, 25 basis points each. I believe that the situation on the ground is going to dictate that we're going to do a lot more than that. Now, this person is definitely a little more to the center than the other candidates we were looking at. And if I go back to Polymarket, this where's his? Like, he has not been the front runner. So for all the time we've been talking on this channel, this did not seem like the person that was going to get the job. There was a minute here, and then it crashed back down to 25%. And the next thing you know, he's getting the job. So this is a little bit of a surprise to me. It does change the math a little bit, in my opinion, but I think in reality, I think there's going to need to be rate cuts. Let's see what you guys think. So is the U.S. government going to shut down tomorrow? I'm going to call this 60-40. We think there is going to be a shutdown tomorrow. Even though in principle, they've agreed on something, but it hasn't gone to a vote. It hasn't gotten approved. One second to type this. Okay, so rate cuts in 2026 in total. So for the whole year, not saying when they're going to come, how they're going to come, but in total, are we going to get 25 basis points of rate cuts? That would be just one cut. Are we going to get 50 basis points? Are we going to get 75 basis points? Or are we going to get 100 or more, which would be 1 full percent? So 3.5 down to 2.5. Remember, the executive branch has said we need to get this thing down to 1%. Now, I think that was hyperbole. I don't think anybody really thinks we're getting down to 1% in the next 12 to 15 months. But I'll let you know what I think at the end. We'll let you guys vote first. And old
It's
Jack
just really sad you pay so much money in interest by keeping it so high.
Well, the unspoken thing here, so the Fed has a dual mandate, which is to maintain a strong job market and keep inflation at bay. 2% is their target inflation. Now, the reality is 3.5% has been the average inflation for the last 40 or 50 years. We have had years we were under 2%. So it's not like it's a fantasy. That can happen, and I have no problem with that being their target. But they also have to understand we're at around 2.5% right now, and that is historically, that is low. So we just added 0 jobs last year, and we kept inflation under control all year. The shift has occurred. Inflation is not the number one issue out of those two issues. But my greater point is, they'll never say this out loud because it's not their mandate, but the United States owes $38 trillion. These rates, even these a lot of this money is short-term money. These rates make a monumental difference. For the first time in the history of the world, the United States is going to do two things. Number one, they're going to spend more than $1 trillion on interest in their budget. Number two, it's now the biggest line item in the budget, bigger than defense. That's a country that's sick. It's unhealthy, it's sick, and it has to change. One of the fastest ways to change that is to lower rates by 1.5%. That drastically changes this equation. And we got into this $38 trillion worth of debt with rates fluctuating between 0 and 1.5% for 20 years, with a couple of tiny outliers. So that's how we got here. And now we can't change the game now. It's too late. So I believe we will go back to those rates, even 2.25%, 2%. It's dramatic difference. You can't run a country when, the biggest thing you do with every dollar you collect is give it right back and pay interest. You get nothing for that. No infrastructure, no growth, nothing. So that's out there. Old Jock is saying Trump probably had his own preference for the Fed chair, but the bond markets said no. So I think you're right. I think, look at silver, look at gold, look at the bond markets. And if you're the president, you're going, well, maybe I got to pick something a little more towards the center. I don't think he would have picked somebody he doesn't like straight up, but this probably was not his first choice. So, and of course, now that he's picked him, he's going to be the best chairperson in the history of the Fed and all that, but we'll see what happens. Gambit Beer said hyperinflation is another solution to a big lump of debt. That is not the solution that we are looking for. That's true, but not at all the direction we want to go in. Inflation is under control. I don't see anything telling me, we're 2.5 years into leveled off inflation, way off of its highs. So until such time as there's tangible evidence, right? Remember, this is the same Fed that went through 14 months in a row of inflation rising before they decided to raise interest rates at all from like 1%. So you can't argue both sides of the same coin. It's one or the other. All right, welcome to Talkin Investing. Frederick, been a member for 12 months. Thanks for being a member. What price do you see? What price do you expect Bitcoin is an actual bear market? History says once people finally capitulate on this time difference, bear almost over. So that's the right way to frame this, in my opinion, Frederick. I think that everybody right now feels like the 4-year cycle just ended, right? That's number one. We're now 60 days past the end, maybe 60 to 90 days past the end of a typical 4-year cycle. And so there's a chunk of people that think, if we follow the same cycle, we're about to head into a crypto winter. What I would tell those people is we've been in a Bitcoin bear market for some time now. I think we're already going through capitulation. We're already months. I'm going to go to the 1 day. I mean, if you look at the 1 day, here's this green line. I have a green line as a touch point. This goes back to November of 2024. That's 14, 15 months ago? We touched this again in January of 2025, again in March of 2025. We had a nice run up to all-time new highs in the middle. But again, we crossed this in November. We then had what I would call a flash crash because I'll zoom in a little bit now. What that is supposed to say. So you can see we had a bit of a flash crash. This is a 1-day candle. We recovered massively from the bottom. We got down to $80,524. We have not been back there since, but we have been trading in a tight range. Other than a few days, this line at around 93,500 has been very solid resistance. Resistance. Yeah, we had 2 days that closed above it here before we went red again and went back down below. But we did almost retest our line of support here. So we got down to $81,000.12. So we bounced off at 81,000. Last time we bounced off at 80,500. I think this is an ultra important line to hold. And you love to see this is, and anything can happen, but this hammer candle with the hammer on top is the best case scenario that you want to see on a day like today. That's usually a sign that that was a bottom. And that's not a guarantee, but you can see the RSI is almost reset. It's at like 32 here, right? It's at 33. So again, it can get a little under 30. So, but I think you're seeing all of these basic indicators are saying like this was a really good, strong retest. We'll see if it holds up because that's what we're going to find out. If this does not hold up, then I feel like, I got a line at it's about $74,000. And I think that would be in play if this line does not hold up. I think this is going to hold up, but I don't know, right? We've seen how in the very short term, Bitcoin can do whatever it wants. And I'll tell you, so we got a couple members here saying it will go lower. And Gambit Beer is saying 72 to 75K. The bank is open is saying 77. So we got a lot of people predicting we're going to take that line out. Right? I mean, I'm not gonna be shocked if this line doesn't hold. They're setting this setup looks like it's going to hold. So maybe that's more likely than not, but it's nothing that resembles a certainty, right? In the short term, we've learned we don't know the next day, week, month. It's just go ahead, guess. We've got a lot of indicators. Some of them say one thing, some of them say another thing, and then all of a sudden the government shuts down. And people panic for 3 days, and we go down to 74,000. I do think if we hit these lower numbers, that there'll be flashes like this one was today, like this one was several months ago. That's what usually tends to happen. I don't think we're going to enter a new lower trading range for an extended period of time. So that gets back to Frederick's point here. I think we're already pretty deep into a bear market. We are... I measure this from our all-time high that we set at early October. That's October, November, December, January. That's 4 full months. To the low we hit today, that's 36% move to the downside. That's a pretty solid bear market. It's not a crypto winter, and this is where I have a difference of opinion. I think the crypto winters for Bitcoin, and probably for Ethereum and a few others, the altcoins, different story. But I think for Bitcoin, I don't think you're getting 75, 85, 90% pullbacks anymore. There's too much institutional money in this for that to happen. There's too much demand. There's too much adoption on a daily basis. So do we have a bear market? We're in my mind, it's hard to ignore that we're clearly in a bear market. We've been going down. We've been going sideways for 14 months. We've been going down for the last 4. So that's what I think is happening. How long does it last? I don't know. When do we go finally break out to the upside? I don't know. We could hit lower points, but to get to a crypto winner, we got to get down to like $30,000 on Bitcoin. I just don't see anything like that happening.
It's just a good average point if that does happen.
I mean, anybody that's got any powder left at that point, I definitely would buy, but who knows? Where do you think, 2 questions, George, what's your vote on this rate cut situation?
Well, I'm always hopeful that it'll be 100.
You're in the 100 or more?
Yeah.
I am too.
I mean, it has to happen. I mean, we're just the market, the middle class, we're screwed. We need help. And I don't understand the whole job thing in the economy. To me, it seems like it's a lot weaker than everybody says it is.
Well, and we can watch and wait as the numbers get revised down, because I think you're right. I think it is weaker. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say all day today. I don't know how many likes we have. If you are willing, if you're here, if you haven't yet, if you could smash the like button, it does help the stream out a lot. I completely forgot about that. So let's catch up. George, you know how many likes we happen to have?
More than 2.
More than 2? That's not our goal.
20. Hang on. Sometimes it doesn't refresh. 42, Tom.
42 likes. We're trying to get 100. We usually scrape our way to 100 likes. So I forgot to mention it all day today. So it would be much appreciated. It does help the stream and the channel. So smash the like button if you are willing. So George, you're at 100 basis points. Okay. And then question 2, where are you at on Bitcoin? Is 80 going to hold? Did we just retest and have a double bottom? It will not hold, in your opinion.
I just readjusted. I believe the 73 is the number that's really a good line of support. Like 73.5, 73 something. I think that will hold.
So a lot of people are agreeing with you here. We got Gambit Beer saying 72 to 75. The bank is open saying 77. Ethan is saying it's going to go lower. So And we have Larry saying, I believe we will hit the 50K to 40K sometime this year. And actually, if we really do the math, a crypto winner would be, let me get everything on the screen here. Far enough. 31,000. So 30,000 is about a 75% pullback. That, if we're having a crypto winter, that's the smallest crypto winter we've ever had. So they've been between 75 and like 88% pullbacks. So are we going to have a crypto winter? Or are we going to go to, now if we go to 40 to 50, so let's split the difference and say 45, that's still a 65% pullback. That's brutal. So that would be kind of splitting the difference between a bear market and a full-blown crypto winter. And listen, none of us, we can't take anything off the table. There's too much uncertainty out there. We are in a market of uncertainty, and that creates volatility and unpredictability.
Did you hear me, FUD?
FUD, 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 FUD.
I think that this, it's like I said, this is going to be the tale of 2 years.
Well, we have, and not to mention, we're not going to get into any of this, but there's very volatile geopolitical things happening all over the globe. Now, a lot of them seem to be moving in the right direction. We can only all hope that that's what happens and that all these things get resolved. But, and domestically here, I know we have a lot of background noise that could surface and cause panic. And I know those of you from other countries, you can and let me know, we're in the United States, but I know we've got people from all over. I know Canada is going through a lot of turmoil right now.
Is Monday a holiday?
Not to my knowledge. Is it?
When's President's Day or something like that? Isn't that coming up?
One of those could sneak up on me. Look, let's look. I'm going to look.
Oh, as you do with that. If you guys are like me, go to Suno, SUNO.com. Create your own music. You'll never listen to music the same. I can't even listen to the radio anymore, Tom. That market's dead.
Does anybody listen to the radio? Gambit Beer
Monday's a big holiday, and yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the New York Stock Exchange. We were closed for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 19th in 2026. The next one is February 16th, Washington's birthday. So that's only a couple of weeks away. We will have a day, I think that's 3 Mondays from now, the market will be closed. So good question, George. According to the New York Stock Exchange.com, that's the next day it's closing. Good about that source.
Good news, Tom.
Good news.
We have a full moon on Sunday.
All right.
So this is usually the end of the pain.
So let's see if that lines up. I'm looking at
oh wait, maybe that's not Sunday. Hang on. I think it is Sunday. What's coming up? Let's put it that way. It's at the beginning of the month. Full moon, February.
While you're looking that
up.
Yeah,
the first. Yeah, it's the first.
All right, so that's this weekend. So maybe Monday's a big day. Kate said, yeah, Tom, you basically called the bottom in April. I'm taking out a loan to buy everything. I would say don't do that. Not financial advice, but I certainly wouldn't do that. But I did, if you guys remember, and this is when I made a giant trade and I bought a lot of stock. I did on April 8th. This is showing April 9th was the bottom. On April 8th, I said, I've done this only 2 or 3 times in my life, but this is so obviously a bottom. It's ridiculous. And so I backed up the truck on that day. And it turns out April 9th was in fact the bottom. And we had a massive, this was, Bitcoin went up almost 70% from there. So that clearly, that worked out. That one was much more obvious than this. This looks like a nice double bottom, but I will tell you, I don't have anywhere near the conviction that I had. If this wasn't a bottom, I was going to be shocked. Not to say that it couldn't have been, right? I've been shocked before, but I would have been shocked if that wasn't a bottom. That is not true right here. This looks like a nice, neat double bottom. Everything seems to be setting up that way, but you don't know. We could get whammied. We could go retest, right? We could retest the very numbers that we tested in that bottom in April. So that is not off the table. And I didn't buy anything was that true? I bought some XRP, I think, this week. But I basically didn't buy anything this week. For most of my stock positions, I've been dollar cost averaging in for a long time. I have one that's in the red, Marathon. It's in the red big time. I dollar cost averaged in all the way through December of 2025. So I'm not dollar cost averaging into anything unless one of the other stocks that I have an ultra high level of conviction in somehow goes down and I'm red again on it. But I'm going to knock on wood that doesn't happen because I'm up pretty good on the rest of the portfolio. It's just Marathon that's brutalizing me.
Well, Tom, you got to have this thing called money. Call it powder in order to do that. And I've been tapped out for a little while.
You and everybody else, I know. And it's part of my reason is like what I got left, I'm not doing it unless it's extreme. Like if an extreme buying opportunity presents itself. So and XRP started to be there. It got to one of my numbers where I said I'll buy. And again, that was just a little dollar cost averaging, which I've been doing for a long time on that. So that's the only one I'm continuing on. Everything else I've shut down. You know, IREN's down 10% today, but you know, I'm in it for $6. And I know a bunch of you members are in it for less than that. Some of you are in it for a lot less than that. So, you know, if you're in this for $3.50, I doubt you're buying the dip at $54. So that's why it's different for everybody. And we pound the table. This isn't financial advice. Do your own due diligence. And it's because everybody's at a different spot in their overall investing life. They're at a different spot in their accumulation of any given stock. So, you know, the answer is different for everybody. There's no answer key. Oh, I want to bring this up. This is on the list. And Bitcoin Manipulated said, Bitcoin at those prices, global hash rate would drop 99.7%. So, yeah, because we got to remember, there is an economics to this. People are, by mining the Bitcoin, they're verifying transactions on the blockchain. And if they're not going to get any reward for it, or if the reward is far less than the money they spend, they'd be better off just turning all their machines off and buying Bitcoin instead of mining it. So at some point, there is some support at the bottom there historically, and we're actually really at one of those key ratios where it's an indicator that Bitcoin has bottomed out and is going to soon turn around. But for every one of those, I guarantee somebody out there can find me an indicator that says the opposite. So we are definitely in some kind of neutral zone. But I want to show you, because this is interesting. So the Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin difficulty level, which is essentially a byproduct of how large the Bitcoin network is, this peaked in November 3rd, 2025 at 155 trillion. This was one adjustment down. That's one in a row. This was two in a row. This was three in a row. You can't see it because it was so tiny, but there was a fourth one in a row here. This was a fifth one in a row. So we've gone from 155 trillion to 141 trillion, but there's more. We are set up for historic drop in the difficulty level. Right now, we are almost exactly, so if you look here, we're almost exactly halfway through, and this is about a 2-week period on the average. So we're exactly 1 week into this 2-week window where we'll make another adjustment, and that will be at Bitcoin block 935,424. So we're halfway there. Currently, we're set to have a 16% adjustment. I think that would be the second worst one ever. If you remember back 4 or 5 years ago, China made Bitcoin mining illegal and things fell off a cliff and we had some big adjustments down. But other than that, we're 5 or 6 adjustments in a row down, and we're about to eclipse them all in this one. And at this point, I think the best case scenario at this point is an 8% adjustment down, meaning that's the least we're going to get. Because if half of it was at 16% and the other half's at 0%, which would be a radical increase, and there's no reason to believe that that's going to happen, then that would equal an 8% average. So I think it'll be worse than that. I think we're looking at a 10, 12. I think it won't. This is really bad. I'll be surprised if it ends up at 16, but 10, 12, easily. That's a big adjustment down. And remember, for the Bitcoin miners, the more this goes down, for the companies that have a lot of exahash, the easier it is to mine Bitcoin, and the more Bitcoin they're going to mine per exahash. So, hopefully...
You should have talked about, in the beginning of our stream, you should have talked about Meta.
Meta.
Dude, are you kidding me?
Between Meta and Microsoft, I'm convinced the market is random.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, but I just remembered Meta, and it just blew my mind.
I might have that open. If not, I'll look at that because it's worth talking. It just didn't make the cut. The Meta Microsoft thing was on my list. So let's go to.
I'm sorry, but it's probably the most impressive thing that's happened this week. It's probably stock market.
So if you go to the 5-day, you're going to see Shazam. On January 28th, Meta took off. It added like $250 billion to its market cap in 1 day. It was up, 10, 11, 12%. I don't know where it ended the day, but it was up enormous. One of the big up days in the history of these supersized stock, because understand Meta is now, they are now...
They were 1.9? It's got to be real close.
$1.8 trillion. So they're closing in on $2 trillion. They've actually been there before. Their high is 796, and that was over $2 trillion. But these $2 trillion, $3 trillion, $4 trillion companies, they didn't used to exist. This is crazy. So, the biggest and I know time flies, but 20 years ago, the biggest company in the world was $400 billion. Now there's companies that move that much in one day. They move the amount of what the biggest company in the whole world was 20 years ago in one day. So while Meta was doing this, and it was doing it largely on a monumental commitment, it beat on earnings. It had great guidance, but they came out and said, we're going to spend $125 billion on CapEx, focusing on AI. The market loved it. They were head over heels with that scenario. So why then? That's Meta. Correct. Okay. Microsoft, 5-day chart. They were at 480, and they went down to, at their low, 424. While Meta gained $250 billion of market cap in one day, Microsoft lost $350 billion of market cap in one day. And they did so on announcing earnings. They beat on revenue. They beat on profit. They raised their forecast, and they said, we're going to spend big. We're all in on AI. Now, that's the identical thing that Meta did. And one of those stocks went through the roof, and the other one crashed. So somebody tell me the nuance that must be in here somewhere that explains this, other than there are players in the market big enough that they can even manipulate these $4 trillion type company. This is now, Microsoft is now down to $3.2 trillion. They were over $4 trillion a very short period of time ago. So that's a mystery to me. Let's go through this poll. Rate cuts for 2026. 23% of you, so about a quarter of you, think 25 basis points. The leader was 50 basis points with 41%. 75 basis points got 11%. 100 or more got 25%. So 75 or more got 36%. 50 basis points got 41%. If you were to combine these two and compare, that's pretty close. So we're kind of all over the place because I think we just don't know. Now we've got a person that we haven't really, everybody was vetting other people, and now we've got a nominee that we got to digest. The market clearly hasn't digested it yet, and we're going to have to see what happens. I don't think it matters who's the next Fed chair. I think we're going to get 100 or more basis point rate cuts. So that's my personal opinion. So I would be in that 25% group. But we got to see what else happens. You know, other things can affect this, but I just think there's overwhelming need for these cuts. When do
you short it, Tom? Or don't you short it?
The market?
Facebook.
Oh, Facebook?
Or Meta.
I will not short Meta because let me tell you.
That's just so
I want to zoom out. Here's one that I've been about. This is about as wrong as I've been. I stand by my take, but just factually, this is as wrong as I've been on anything. If you go to the 5-year, let's go. How low did we go? So in 2022, Meta was down at $88. $88. It had crashed because it was at $379 6 months earlier. So it crashed all the way from $379 into the 80s. Now, there's a reason. I bet you a lot of you remember Mark Zuckerberg's Metaverse video. They came out and said they had quarterly earnings, and they came out and said, we are all in on the Metaverse. They changed their name from Facebook to Meta, and they said, you know, astronomical dollars. Not as much as they're talking about putting into AI, but by the way, right now, but, you know, I don't remember, it was 30, 40, 50 billion dollars they were committing to putting into the Metaverse, because the Metaverse was the next big thing, and we'd all be shortly living our lives through the Metaverse. And two things about that. You can watch the video. You make your own decision. It was, in my opinion, the one word that describes that video was bizarre. It was just bizarre. You can make your own judgments. That's my opinion. So I watched him talk for however long he talked on that video. Listen to the conference call where they said, we're all in on the Metaverse. The Metaverse did not happen, ladies and gentlemen. So it's years later. Is there going to be some type of Metaverse that does something somewhere? Let's just say, I think not. Maybe it'll be some tiny part integrated into whatever AI ends up being, but AI has already, we've got AI that's changing the face of things. We've got cryptocurrency that's changing the face of financial markets. Like, we've moved on. This Metaverse thing was, to me, it was an absolute joke. So it was to me. So I'm going to do a poll. I'm going to end this poll. And I was not shy about it. Having said that, so for that reason, let me get the poll up first and then I'll finish. All right, I'm going pretty harsh on either side of this. Thoughts on the Metaverse in the next 5 years? Number one, I spelled years wrong. Number one, it's the future. It's going to do great. That means you think it's going to do great. Metaverse is the future of things to come. Number two, it's going to do okay. It'll be just fine. It's not going to take over the world, but it'll be a thing. Number three, it's a joke. So I've already tipped my hand. I think it's a joke. I thought it was a joke. So right here, and I watched somebody who I think is one of the better people on the internet as far as YouTube channels go. And there's things I have drastically disagreed with him on. You're never going to agree with everybody on everything, right? There's things that this person has gotten wrong. There's things I've drastically disagreed with him on. But when Meta hit the 80s, he basically made it the biggest position in his portfolio. And he hasn't sold any of it since then. So he took this from 80 to 700. So I'm done betting against Meta.
I have a lot of friends that have done the same thing, Tom.
That's funny. His Honor said, Tom, you were wrong on PayPal too. I think I was early on PayPal, and I got to tell you, one of the reasons I'm not buying any more of what I want to, of what I'm in right now, which is the data centers, high performance computing, Bitcoin miners, is I have 5 or 6 stocks that I want to build a position out in, and absolutely PayPal is at the top of my list. So I got in and out of that back in the day because their turnaround story wasn't happening. So I did abandon ship there's a couple of things I abandoned ship on for anywhere from 15 to 20 months, and I'm circling back around to them now because maybe I'm going to be wrong twice, but I don't think I was wrong. I think I was early.
Broken clock. Broken clock.
That's right.
Wait 2 times a day.
Yeah, well, so far I'm at 0 on PayPal. I'll take 1, but I do think the PayPal story valuation makes no sense to me. It's crazy time. Old Jock saying, the metaverse is the only place many people are still able to get a foothold on the property ladder. Yeah, remember the people buying beachfront property for $100 million? Oh, I got a condo on the beach. I got it for $100 million. What? What beach? Guess how many beaches there are in the metaverse? There's 2 answers.
Unlimited.
Yeah, 0 is the real answer, or infinity. So you're either buying nothing or one piece of an infinite supply. So that never made any sense to me. I don't understand. There's a sucker born every minute is the old phrase. Whoever that guy was who sold somebody a piece of beachfront property for $100 million, I don't know whether to congratulate them or scold them for even accepting that money. But I suppose if somebody's willing to pay for it. See somebody talking about why is Mara so bad? Why are they the worst one? Management is terrible. Marathon was slow to react. $1 cost averaged into Marathon in 2025 all the way through to December, not because I think they're the best company, because I think they've proven they're not the best company. But they are a big company. They have a strong balance sheet. They have over 50,000 Bitcoin on that balance sheet. Their market cap's less than the value of their Bitcoin by far, even with Bitcoin down at these numbers. So, to me, this is a recovery story, not because they're the next big thing and they're a great company and I love management. I just think they're so grossly underpriced that unless we are about to move into a bear market and unless they can't get any traction on data centers, then I just think there's a lot of upside just to get back to kind of break even for them. So it will very well may be the first one I'm out of. But I just don't think it's a stock that I'm going to lose money on when I'm done. It's certainly not going to be my best performer unless they do something dramatic. They have not had, we're only a few days short of 90 days without a press release from Marathon. We are 90 days to the day without a press release from Core Scientific. We are getting a lot less press releases across the board. Most of these companies have stopped doing their monthly operational report. There's only really 4 that I count that are left. We'll just take a quick look at that. So in the month of December, CleanSpark put out a monthly operational report. They mined 622 Bitcoin on 50 exahash. BitDR put out a monthly operational report. They mined 636 Bitcoin, more than CleanSpark, and they're at 55 exahash. And just to let people know, I take this for whatever it's worth, but in December, they added just under 8 exahash. In November, they added 6 exahash. In October, they added 6 exahash. And in September, they added 5 exahash. BitDR quietly is now running more Bitcoin miners than anybody other than Marathon. And I can't even be sure of that because Marathon's not reporting anymore. So we're going to have to wait for a quarterly update to even see what they're doing.
Well, but, I mean, Tom, they have their own pool.
They have their own pool. We can look at their pool and see how many they're mining. but they're not reporting. Some of their stuff gets mined outside of their pool. Some of their things are not hosted by themselves. And I've always found it to be a confusing reconciliation. Maybe some of you out there have a handle on that and you can tell us what they did. The bank has open said the Meta glasses are collecting data every day. I don't know if that's you're being serious or if that's a joke.
No, it is. It's true. Absolutely, it's true.
How many are out there?
Well, I was almost going to make it mandatory for everybody, but I didn't.
The Meta glasses?
We have 4 people in the company. It doesn't stream perfectly because it's great because so someone's working, you can say, hey, FaceTime me.
Here's what I would say. If I was collecting data, I'd rather be ChatGPT right now because
oh yeah.
Or
but
Gemini
don't get
or
me
Grok.
Why did you steer the ship to ChatGPT? I just want to tell everybody, I used ChatGPT yesterday to do some accounting stuff. It's the end of the year for some of us, and it got everything completely wrong. It wasn't even close. And I tried to have a conversation like it. Oh, and it was absolutely ridiculous. You're right to be upset. And I just did data entry stuff, nothing complicated. It was take these reports and add the monthly deposits together. And it couldn't do it. I mean, it couldn't even get close to it. And I don't do the free subscription. I pay for the business plan. It makes me question everything about AI, Tom. It makes me question everything about AI. Nobody's replacing jobs right now with AI the way it is. I am sorry. It was absurd. And everybody says, oh, accountants got to watch out. Accountants got to watch out. I mean, when I say it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life, it was like a kindergarten did it.
I agree with you, George. I just want to be on record as saying I'm on record. I have been very clearly trying to delineate the fact that, and that's why I keep saying high performance computing and data centers and large language models, because everybody says AI, we're investing in AI. There is no AI on this earth. No. Look it up. We don't have to argue about it. You can go look it up yourselves. There's none that even claim to be AI.
Whoa.
Go ahead.
Hang on. Have you looked at what the dictionary says artificial intelligence is? Because maybe they've changed the definition, because they do that.
Here's the thing. You're right. The dictionary will change definitions, and they've actually added terms. They've said artificial specific intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and like a chess bot is, specific intelligence. It's great at chess, but it's still not actual intelligence. And go ask any large language model, are you AI? And it will definitively tell you, no, I am not AI. I'm a complicated predictive algorithm. They are disclaiming that, period. And you're right, George. And, I, as a side project, have been working on this for some time. I have logged in. It could be 1,000 hours on these large language models and the flaws that are still in there. And I'm not saying they're bad, because I will tell you this.
I'm saying they're bad.
Well, it depends. You gotta know what they can do, and you gotta know what they can't do, because there's some things they're fantastic at. There's some things they're so wrong at. And in fact, there's an industry term called hallucinating, which means literally at some point, in order to sound coherent, they literally just start making things up and telling them you as facts.
By the way, and this is why quantum physics, quantum computing does not work. It's called warping results.
Don't even get me started on quantum computing.
I mean, it gets really geeky and technical. We're going to lose everybody. But this is why when they talk about breaking your keys and all that with a quantum computer, that's not going to happen. because
right. No, there's
it needs to get to absolute zero. And you can't have a dust particle.
Here's my opinion on quantum computing. It's, first of all, it's theoretical right now. We've had very specific limited instances of where they claim they solve a given problem, but if you look, there's a disclaimer that they actually have no way to know whether they've solved the problem or not. They just do sample testing to see if this could be consistent with a solution to a problem that's statistical in nature that has literally billions of solution points. So you can research it yourself. Don't believe the hype. There's not a working quantum computer on the face of the earth. And for them to do what George is talking about, which is break the public keys or hack into your wallet, right now, the trajectory is they're hoping if everything goes to plan, we're 10 to 15 years away from a quantum computer that can do that. They're not talking about breaking the blockchains. They've already said they can't do that. And by the way, that's if things stay on track. And guess what? They never do. If somebody says that technology is 15 years away, that means it's 50 or it's never coming. Just look back at anything. I'll tell you this. I had the biggest argument in 2019. It's now 2026. In 2019, during Christmas, Amazon had a big campaign. Next Christmas, every package is going to be delivered by a drone. No more trucks, no more this, no more that. All packages delivered by a drone. We are the future. Drones are the future. Looking forward to next Christmas. I bet everybody at the table, I'll give you 5 more Christmases. There's 0% chance of that happening. It was nonsense talk. And of course, we're 6 years later, and we now know that's never going to happen. That's not even a stated goal anymore. The logistics of that were so ridiculous that anybody who thought for more than 1 second would immediately know that was never going to happen. And it will never happen. They're not off. They're not, they didn't think it was going to be next year, but it's really going to be 10 years from now. It's going to be never. So that's the way a lot of these things go. I'll go back to AT&T, and I don't even remember what the things they promised, but there was in the 90s and early 2000s, they had a campaign. They would show some super technology that was just amazing, that blew everybody's mind, that didn't really exist. And they would end the commercial by saying, and the company that's going to bring it to you, AT&T. Well, I tried to look back in the archives and find those commercials. They're gone. And none of that stuff ever happened. So I'm on a rant, but you got to be careful with all this. I'm calling it snake oil sales. That's the hundreds of years old term. This has been going on forever. Oh, we got the next big thing. This is magic in a bottle, et cetera, et cetera. If it sounds too good to be true, that's because it's not true. That's a pretty good rule of thumb. And that's one that I go by. Oh, yeah, Gambit Beer, thank you. I intentionally did not mention that. Gambit Beer said, wait till Tom hears about the promise Elon Musk makes. He's gonna be shocked. I saw, and maybe you know another one that I saw that passed this, but I saw what he said about robots, and he's living in a dream world, within a dream world, inside of a fantasy. That's my opinion. And I'm not an Elon Musk hater. I think he's actually one of the most innovative people that's ever lived. But he says he is the art of saying things that have no shot of happening. Or he knows he's what?
He's a hype man.
Yeah, he's maybe the greatest hype man in the history of the world. He's about to be a trillionaire. So I'm not saying it didn't work for him, but you're right. I'm not even going to talk about what he said. with just, you may know something else he said, but the thing I heard him say about robots is not a world that I believe that we're going to be living in shortly.
That's a funny one, Tom. But that's not necessarily. Do you remember iRobot?
I remember iRobot. That was a movie.
Yeah, with Will Smith.
Yes. I honestly, I thought that was a subpar movie. Watchable. Well, that's my personal opinion.
I just think that we're going to have a ton of robots.
Maybe we'll have a ton of robots, but listen to what he said about what's going to happen with robots. And then we'll discuss. I can't even go there. Tom may be the last Mara pig. I haven't heard that term in years. Thank you, Gary. That's a throwback. There used to be so many when the stock hit $81, but has more red shareholders on former shareholders than all other miners combined. Most went broke. Listen, if you were buying Marathon at 81, that was a nightmare, but it spiked up to 81, and that was crazy time. But I'm not going to deny, I mean, Marathon's been the worst stock to hold out of all the Bitcoin miners for the last 2 years, and it's not even close. So as a stock, they're just dead last, and they're the worst thing in my portfolio. So, and I am not a Marathon to the moon person. I don't believe that Marathon at 65 exahash is worth a quarter of what it was worth a year ago or 2 years ago when it was at 20 exahash. The math on that does not make sense to me. They've gone a long way to vertically integrating. Remember, they made the wrong bet. They were asset light, meaning they were not going to vertically integrate. They were all about just adding machines, have somebody else host the machines, have somebody else provide, and they buy the energy. And they learned. And it's been a couple of years. They have been converting from hosted machines to self-hosted machines for several years now. And, you know, they probably have 40 exahash they host on their own now. And they have their own pool. So they are now vertically integrating. Like I said, I think they're a middle-of-the-road company. That's just my opinion. But I think they're being priced as an F. And I think they're a C. So there's an awful lot of money to be made between an F and a C. That's just my opinion.
Oh, my goodness. It's 6:23.
All right. We got to wrap it up then. George, any parting thoughts?
No.
Let's go.
Just remember full moon Sunday.
We'll just wrap up the poll. Thoughts on the metaverse in the next 5 years. In last place, it's the future, 27%. It will be okay, 33%. It's a joke, 40%. So we had a split on that one. There was people in each camp there. I think it's a joke. I think there's multiple technologies that have lapped the field on that. And it's going to be an afterthought. But that's just what I think. All right. Well, thank you, George. Thank you. Special thanks to all the members. And thanks for everybody else that showed up. We're here every Friday after the market closes. So it's our goal to start on time from now on. So look for that in the future. So thanks, everybody. Go Bitcoin. I think is the Super Bowl this week, or we got another week to wait? See ya. The Bills lost. I'm already out. So enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you members on Tuesday.